G'day, YouTube world. Good to see you all. If you don't know who we are, we've taken upon ourselves as hardcore astral travelers to fly around at night and beat up the cabal and foil all the plans that they've got going. And today's one is our doozy. I love this one. So as you may or may not be aware, Mr. Gates, this fella, he's got a big plan. Now he wants to deal with global warming by shielding the sun, by putting something between us and the sun and stopping sunlight. I just couldn't think of a more backwards way of doing anything. But what we did find is that that plan's 100% real, and it has a mystical side to it. So if you've seen these articles here, they talk about how reducing the sunlight hitting the earth will reduce the temperature on earth. Of course, it will also make everything grow slower and make the fertility of our planet reduced. Nothing good going on there. Nature already had all of that figured out, but old Billy Boy, he wants to mess with it. So during the week, one of our team had an encounter with the being that they are crafting to intercede between Earth and the sun. In all of the articles, it is an inanimate object, but for those of you who are into consciousness, there's no such thing as a non-conscious object. Everything has consciousness. And the consciousness they're crafting for that object is ugly as sin. You better believe it. So my friend encountered this being. Now, it's still not complete, but is a long way towards completion. And started a fight with it, naturally, or it started to fight her, whichever way it went. And she got herself in ended up biting off a little bit more than she could chew, and she asked for help from the blue avians. The blue avians, they showed up, and they held this giant bat creature, but were not able to kill it or halt it. Watching this thing flap its wings sends shockwaves all over the place. Well, I mean, this thing's at least 100 kilometers across, and it's required an incredible amount of resources and fuel to come into being. But this being is a crafted being, and it's one part demonic, one part AI, and that mix is something they're really used to. But they also used a very rare resource called dragon energy that they used as the shield for the side that faces the sun. It's kind of like the panels they put on the front of the spaceship that has to come back into Earth. Like they used the dragon energy for that, the dragon hide, dragon scale sort of stuff. But when we spoke to the sun about it, the sun couldn't penetrate that. And its usual method of using solar flares and coronal mass ejections to destroy its local enemies, it wasn't going to work for this one. So, you know, strangely enough, it ended up on our plate. Yay. And so after a little bit of now, one of the other functions of a being like this is it would create a haven for dark forces away from the sun. Whereas, you know, their fleets, their ships do get hit by coronal mass ejections. The sun does target these bad guys. This would create a haven that they could hide in, and that's not something we're going to accept. That's just not going to happen. So when we went over there, the first thing we did was we found the heart of this bat, and in it was the section that told the rest of its body how to make dragon, AI, and demonic energy coherent, how it could fuse these three types of beings together to create, well, a Frankenstein, I suppose. You know, but it needs an integration platform for those three different kinds of animal to work together. So the first thing we did was attack the section of the heart that was devoted to that. And it started to spread through the bat like an illness, like a web that went through all of its nervous system and its circulatory system. And it started to, what's the word, lose cohesion, lose function. Parts of it were decoupling from each other, left, right, and center. It did start shaking its wings, but the blue avions created a sort of a, I'm going to call it a rope, it's not a good word, to curl those wings up so that when they beat, it did not create the massive force that, well, that creates problems for all of us. We did manage to shut that down. It took us about half an hour, which is a long time for this group. So we brought it to a point where it really didn't function anymore. It really didn't function anymore. And we were having like epileptic spasms throughout the body. So we ended up locking a lot of their tendons so that that stretch and that movement wouldn't happen. And we did that all over the shoulders and a few other places, but we sort of crippled it, hamstrung it while it was still flying. The easiest from there, we were able, the blue avions then created do I say a human shield? A circle where they spread their wings around the heart of this beast and brought its heart rate down to about 8 or 8.5 times a minute, which was enough to separate the piece that the blue avions really wanted, which was the tail, the cluster at the end of the tail. Kind of like some sort of dinosaur thing with a big lump that if it swings its tail at you, it's going to hurt you. But in it were key nervous systems, were key technologies and intelligence that the blue avions wanted. Now, by letting them dissect it, that promotes their intelligence and gives us a better idea of what the bad guys are doing, so we can then move forward and destroy more of their stuff, you know. Bam. And to do that, we were lucky enough to see one of the blue avian heroes as sort of a Goliath amongst these birdmen. I didn't, like, it never really clicked that they had their own heroes, but this guy was it. And, you know, he must have been a special forces commando, crazy, one of their guys anyway. But he was, you know, he was at least 2 feet taller than the rest of them and built about this much wide. He was just a beast. I'm glad he's on our side. And so once the heart rate slowed down, we're able to chop that off and encapsulate it and send it back to their fleet so they can analyze it. From there, it was just a matter of dissecting and dilute. You know, we flipped it around and pointed at the sun. The demonic energy was gone, like it with the smoke. The way that we deal with AI, we've become very, very efficient and effective, and so we're able to dismantle most of that very quickly, because like in this war, in this phase of this battle between good and evil, the AI seems to be one of the key bad guys' tools. So we've gotten good at shutting that stuff down. And the dragon energy was a really interesting problem because nobody in the solar system wanted it, or nobody we wanted to give it to, and also it couldn't be destroyed. So, you know, we've locked that away for a later date to see what on earth we might do with the thing. But yeah, that's where we're at. You've got to be an incredible megalomaniac to want to block out the sun in this way. Like I just scratch my head in the most, like, what are these dudes thinking? Like, how is that the plan? I don't get it. But, you know, it's a free will zone. They can give it a crack if they want. And we can reach out and stop them. One really interesting feature that I forgot to mention was that this was a created being, but it was created, it had a voodoo doll. And if you're into technical magic, you have, it's called sympathetic magic. This object is just like this object. So anything you do with this object will become that, will impact that object. And so that's how voodoo dolls work. And like, and we found the voodoo doll that they were creating this thing with, and they had at least 20 people working at CERN, right? Who their qualifications ranged in scientific know-how to pure black magic. So for the last several years, this team of 20 has been fueling this thing, has been praying into it, sacrificing into it, building the metaphysical energy in this voodoo doll to create this space monster. Sounds like a science fiction movie. Well, welcome to the party. This is exactly what's going on Earth right now. All of the craziest stuff is proving to be exactly true. Like, you just couldn't dream this stuff up. You really couldn't. But that's what we're doing. The one more interesting thing is that that team of humans who were creating that space monster, and everything they're doing fits in with everything I know about deity creation. It was textbook. They weren't playing around. But also once we destroyed the voodoo doll as well, or demagicked the voodoo doll, that's when those guys got scared, really scared, and scared of being eaten. By whomever that might be. And so that's going to be the topic of our next mission, to see who the hell is the standover man for CERN? Who is the guy, or whatever he might be, that causes enough fear in the CERN scientists to do the maniacal stuff they're doing over at that facility? I'm really curious, and I hope you are too. Stay tuned for more. Like and subscribe. You know, every click that you put into this channel helps us a lot. Really, that little like button means something to us. And if you're ignoring my Patreon, please stop ignoring my Patreon. I do this off my own bat. We all do. And we could really use the money. If we had money coming in from this, then we wouldn't have to go have normal day jobs. And we could focus a lot more time and energy on making this planet a better place to live. But yeah, love to you all. And see you all soon.